Hello everyone, my name is Parul and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's MHS webinar entitled Unlocking Early Success, Nurturing Preschool Attention Skills, presented by Arthi and Rebecca. This webinar is part of MHS webinar series ADHD Uncovered Strategies for Supporting Youth and Adults. We are thrilled to have you all here with us today and would like to begin by telling you a bit about MHS clinical and education divisions. MHS Clinical specializes in aiding the identification and treatment of psychological disorders for improved patient outcomes at all stages of life. MHS Education specializes in providing the expertise and resources required to help children and adolescents reach their full potential in and beyond the classroom. With our advanced suite of tools, team of experts, and robust data sets, we help clients provide comprehensive evaluations and uncover powerful insights. During this semi-live webinar, we will start with a pre-recorded presentation by our speakers. After that, we will spend 2 to 3 minutes on the attendance survey, and then we will open the floor for a live Q&A with Arthi and Rebecca. Our main goal is to make sure you have an enjoyable and educational experience. Don't hesitate to ask questions anytime during the webinar as our MHS staff is here to help. To ask a question, locate the Q&A icon at the top right-hand corner of your screen. When you click on this, a panel will appear to the side of your screen and you can find the Ask a Question button at the bottom of this window. Questions for Arthi and Rebecca related to the content of the webinar will be read aloud and answered after the presentation. I would also like to share an important note with all of you regarding obtaining your CE credit after the webinar today. As a part of the CE credit requirements, all participants are encouraged to complete a feedback survey. We are using this survey to record your attendance at the webinar here today. In order to satisfy this requirement, we have sent you an email that contains a link to the survey. The subject line for this email is the title of today's webinar. We will allow for 3 minutes at the end of the session to complete the survey. Please do not complete the survey until the end of our webinar today. If you have not received the survey email by the end of the session, then please send us an email at marketing@mhs.com so we can send it to you. Also, if you could not find the email in your inbox, I would suggest you to please check your junk folder as well. Once your survey has been submitted, you will be sent another email containing the link to access your CE credit certificate. Now, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. Arthi is a research scientist at MHS. She completed her PhD in neuroscience at Queen's University. In her role, Arthi contributes to development of psychometrically sound and scientifically validated measures for use in clinical and educational settings. Her passion lies in nurturing resilience and growth in children to address behavioral challenges. Rebecca is a healthcare solution consultant at MHS. With 18 years of experience as a nationally certified school psychologist, she is an advocate for greater access and equity in mental health care across the lifespan. She is passionate about early development and intervention aiming to enhance outcomes within educational and behavioral health systems. We are glad to have both here today. As we begin our presentation, I again would like to quickly remind you that there will be a survey sent to you in order to satisfy CE credit requirements. If you do not receive this email before the end of the session, then please send us an email at marketing@mhs.com so we can send it to you. Now let's start the webinar. I will hand it over to you, Arthi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to Pearl for the introductions. Hope you're all having a lovely day so far. So early childhood is a period of remarkable growth and development, and we are so excited to be here today with you to chat about how we can unlock early success by nurturing preschool attention skills. Rebecca and I, as you know, work for MHS, a leading developer of innovative assessments and solutions. At MHS, we are committed to empowering individuals to reach their full potential and contribute positively to the world around us. We'll be talking about some of MHS's assessments today in the context of inattention in early childhood. However, these assessments should not be used as the sole basis for making diagnosis or educational eligibility decisions. At MHS, we strive for fairness and equity in the development and deployment of the products we make, the solutions we provide, and in the people we lead. Through our strategic focus on fairness, equity, and bias reduction, MHS is committed to the responsible development and deployment of tests that ensure fair and unbiased decision-making for everyone, regardless of their race, ethnicity, sex, culture, or status. Unbiased decision-making tools are a gateway to fair and equitable opportunities for all test takers in the intended test population. So let's get started. We hope that by the end of today's session, you're able to identify how preschool attention skills can impact school readiness and later achievement, discuss why early intervention is vital in addressing challenges for our earliest learners, explore the use of Connor's Early Childhood and Connor's Kiddie Continuous Performance Test Second Edition assessment tools and how they can help identify attention challenges early, and recognize how using these tools can facilitate smooth transitions to formal schooling for young children with attention challenges. Okay, let's start with a bit of background on school readiness. School readiness is a broad concept that refers to a child possessing the necessary skills, knowledge, and attitudes for success, not only in school, but also later in life. It's important to highlight that school readiness goes beyond the basics of reading and math. In fact, it's deeply tied to a child's physical, cognitive, social, and emotional development. Each of these areas plays a pivotal role in setting the foundation for lifelong learning and adaptability in various settings. The Head Start framework emphasizes that a well-rounded approach to school readiness covers 4 key developmental domains: physical development, ensuring that children are healthy, well-nourished, and physically capable of engaging with their environment; cognitive development, supporting curiosity, problem-solving skills, and early literacy or numeracy; social development, teaching children to interact appropriately with others, developing cooperation and empathy; and emotional development, helping children understand and regulate their emotions, which is key for managing classroom demands and peer interactions. But school readiness isn't one-sided. While children need to be prepared for the structured environment of school, there are 2 equally important factors. Families play a central role in supporting school readiness. When families are actively involved and empowered to guide their children's learning, children tend to flourish. Schools also need to be equipped to meet the diverse needs of children from various backgrounds. This includes offering inclusive environments that adapt to a child's individual pace and developmental needs. In short, school readiness is mutual. It's a partnership where children, families, and schools must all be ready and equipped to succeed. Holistic preparation is essential. By addressing not only the cognitive side of readiness, but also the physical, social, and emotional aspects, we set children up for not just academic achievement, but for thriving in life. Laying this foundation during early childhood ensures that children are better able to navigate challenges, both in their educational journey and beyond. When the support system is in place, it paves the way for continuous learning and growth. Building on that foundation, let's delve into how school readiness translates into academic achievement. Let's start by breaking down what we mean when we say academic competence. It's easy to think of this term as only referring to core subjects like reading, writing, and math. But in reality, academic competence is much more than just mastering these traditional academic skills. One critical aspect of academic competence is the presence of academic enablers, which are non-academic behaviors and attitudes. These enablers create the foundation that allows students to fully benefit from instruction they receive in the classroom. For example, social skills are crucial for interacting with peers and teachers in ways that support learning. Motivation plays a huge role as students who are more motivated are more likely to engage with material and persevere through challenges. Finally, study skills help students to organize their learning effectively, whether it's through planning, goal setting, or time management. Observable and modifiable learning behaviors related to motivation, positive attitudes towards learning, the ability to maintain attention, flexibility in problem solving, and persistence on academic tasks play an important role in academic achievement. These characteristics that facilitate academic success are referred to sometimes as approaches toward learning or learning behaviors. Research has shown that learning behaviors are not only linked to school readiness, but can also predict academic achievement beyond intelligence alone. Let's think about how these ideas apply to children with ADHD. Their ability to develop school readiness may hinge not only on addressing their attention and behavior challenges, but also on fostering these key learning behaviors, which could serve as pathways to improve their academic outcomes. One such study by Perrin and others looked at standardized questionnaires across 5 school readiness domains: physical well-being, motor development, social emotional development, approaches to learning, language and cognition, and general knowledge. They defined impairment in school readiness as having impairments in 2 or more of these domains. The study found that 79% of children with ADHD had school readiness impairments compared to only 13% of non-ADHD comparison group. Children with ADHD showed greater odds of impairment in all domains except cognition and general knowledge. The most significant impairment was in approaches toward learning among all the children, indicating that learning behaviors may predict achievement beyond intelligence. Now, keeping this in mind, children with ADHD might particularly have difficulty with some of these approaches toward learning, particularly when it comes to things like maintaining attention and persisting with tasks. So understanding the link between academic competence, enablers, and school readiness is essential for supporting them effectively. Inattention is a part of learning behaviors that has been linked to later academic underachievement. Although younger children have higher levels of inattention than older children, some young children present with extremes of these patterns even at early ages. Inattention looks like more than just a lack of focus, but also not being careful or being inattentive to detail when playing in daily life and in structured activities, having a hard time paying attention to requests or demands when doing something else, having a hard time with multi-step instructions, losing track of things, being easily distractible, and being forgetful. And these behaviors impede learning from a very young age. Given how integral being able to pay attention, follow instructions, and remember details are in learning, it isn't a surprise that children with inattention issues may not be as ready for school as their peers that aren't facing the same challenges and may have, as a result, a harder time in school. It's also important to realize that inattention is much harder to assess in very young children, given the developmentally appropriate behaviors for children in preschool age range can vary widely. As children age, inattention may increase substantially, where hyperactivity may slightly decrease. In fact, by the age of 4, as many as 40% of children have sufficient problems with attention to be of concern to parents and preschool teachers. Like I mentioned earlier, the difficulty here is that inattention is very hard to assess in younger children. Because of the variation in inattention ability among younger children, it's hard to identify what would be considered disordered, especially prior to age 4. For example, what may seem like inattention in one child could simply be a phase of natural curiosity or distractibility that's developmentally typical for their age. These variations make it much more difficult to pinpoint when inattention becomes a cause of concern. In younger children, behaviors that might initially be written off as normal for their age, such as difficulty focusing or short attention spans, could actually be early indicators of inattention issues that may affect them down the line. But distinguishing between developmentally appropriate inattention and potential concerns requires a nuanced approach, one that takes into account the child's developmental stage and context. This is where tools we use to assess challenges like inattention become really important, especially given the impact difficulties with inattention can have in the long term. Another important thing to note is that preschoolers' inattention is not always due to ADHD. It can also be caused by a range of co-occurring or other challenges, such as language impairments, hearing loss, low intellectual functioning, autism, and even be indicative of behaviors observed at home, including impaired sleep, time spent on screens, and limited physical activity. This highlights the importance of considering inattention as a construct on its own and outside the context of ADHD, and how addressing the inattention issues early can assist to improve the lives of many children with various indications. In terms of impact, even after controlling for intellectual ability, research has found that inattention is a strong predictor for later academic underachievement. Children with ADHD inattentive presentation may also be more likely to face challenges in reading, spelling, and math compared to those with hyperactive impulsive presentation. This is because the inattentive type primarily involves difficulties with concentration and sustained attention, which are crucial for academic tasks. So what can we do? Evaluating these challenges early by using tools that are specifically designed for young children, meaning that they take into account this tricky variability in development in this age range, can help with understanding of a child's challenges and allow for early intervention planning. This also allows for understanding which areas intervention may be necessary in for better outcomes. Intervening early can have a significant impact on a child's ability to learn new skills and increase success at school and in everyday life. In fact, intervening early can be more effective and as a result, less costly overall. The connections in a baby's brain are most adaptable in the first 3 years of life. These connections, also called neural circuits, are the foundation for learning, behavior, and health. Over time, these connections become harder to change. Given the brain and other biological systems are most adaptable early in life, and the development that occurs in the earliest years lays the foundation for a wide range of resilient behaviors. While resilience is shaped throughout life as children gain experiences, both good and bad, what happens early really matters. Intervention is likely to be more effective when it's provided earlier in life than later. So the goal here is to make use of this important time to minimize impairment and maximize skills to help with difficulties and not necessarily to eliminate symptoms, but to build a child's repertoire of adaptive coping skills. As we move into the next part of our discussion, let's review. School readiness refers to the essential skills, knowledge, and attitudes needed for success in school and beyond. It encompasses a blend of physical health, cognitive abilities, social and emotional development, and language skills, all of which are crucial for a child's preparedness for learning and for life. We now understand that inattention difficulties at a young age can predict later academic underachievement and difficulties with school readiness. Early evaluation can help us identify behavioral issues that are out of the norm for children of that age range and help inform intervention. And high-quality early interventions can have a significant impact on a child's ability to learn and increase success at school and in everyday life. And now I'll hand it over to Rebecca.
As we move into a discussion around early childhood assessment, we thought it would be informative to review recent updates from the CDC. The CDC's Learn the Signs, Act Early program, funded by the American Academy of Pediatrics, has revised its developmental checklists. The goal of this initiative include identifying evidence-informed milestones, clarifying when 75% of children are expected to reach these milestones, and supporting clinical judgment for screening. This shift focuses on when most children reach milestones, rather than average ages, which were previously defined at the 50th percentile. Additionally, the revisions aim to discourage a wait-and-see approach and avoid delays in diagnosis. As a side note, we all know that that wait-and-see approach is not legally defensible in schools. The revisions for cognitive and social emotional development lacked sufficient normative data, relying heavily on expert judgment. This underscores the need for more comprehensive data to accurately inform developmental milestones. Inattention and related issues significantly affect both cognitive and social development, impacting school readiness and later academic achievement. Symptoms of inattention and impairment vary among young children and are harder to detect at a young age. It can be difficult to determine what is age appropriate for children in early childhood due to that tremendous range of variation, making it challenging to discern what is typical and what requires intervention. Given that overdiagnosis does exist, the combination of broadband and performance-based measures can provide a broad view of a child's behavior, targeting specific difficulties with inattention without focusing solely on a formal diagnosis. As a review, broadband assessments evaluate multiple dimensions of behavioral, emotional, academic, or social concern. Performance-based assessments require children to demonstrate skills and strategies by completing tasks or creating responses. Using these assessments together enhances accuracy in evaluation and intervention planning and can indicate the need for additional narrow band measures. This comprehensive approach provides a holistic view of childhood concerns, including co-occurring difficulties. Attention challenges often manifest in other areas and directly impact many school readiness skills that we've discussed today. Standardized tools that offer peer comparisons are essential for assessing whether a child's development is within a typical range. It is also crucial to consider developmental and social context, especially when addressing difficulties with inattention in young children. Broadband assessment scales and performance-based measures designed for early childhood help distinguish between typical behavior and that requiring intervention, ensuring accurate identification and support. Data gained from these measures extends beyond an ADHD diagnosis. MHS offers tools and solutions for comprehensive, fair, and inclusive assessment of attention difficulties in early childhood. The Connors Early Childhood and Connors Kiddie Continuous Performance Test, 2nd edition, are specifically normed for young children and are focused on evaluating a broad spectrum of developmental skills, including the variability in attention abilities in this age range. Utilizing both a broadband assessment, like the Connors Early Childhood, and a performance-based measure, such as the Connors Kiddie Continuous Performance Test, 2nd edition, results in a thorough evaluation of early childhood concerns. So let's talk about each of these tools. The Connors Early Childhood assesses concerns for children aged 2 to 6 in various settings, including home and preschool. It provides a broad evaluation of behavioral, emotional, and social issues, along with key developmental milestones, while considering the variability in child development. This tool helps identify those early signs of behavioral, social, and emotional problems. It also measures whether a child is meeting major developmental milestones in areas such as adaptive skills, communication, motor skills, play, and pre-academic cognitive abilities. Additionally, it includes items to assess the level of impairment in home settings, learning pre-academic skills, and peer interactions, offering a well-rounded picture of a child's strengths and needs. Given our discussion today, it's clear we need a robust assessment tool that addresses early childhood development, aligns with the CDC's 75th percentile change, which the Connors Early Childhood does, and provides additional information on strengths and level of impairment. The recommendations built into the Connors Early Childhood are specifically aligned with the latest CDC update. The Connors Early Childhood effectively addresses school readiness behaviors and identifies areas of concern without focusing solely on a diagnosis, recognizing that attention difficulties are not unique to ADHD in early childhood. The Connors Early Childhood broadband tool is also flexible, making it suitable for various purposes, such as screening, progress monitoring, intervention planning, classroom recommendations, and eligibility evaluation under IDEA. Its flexibility comes from the separate behavior scales and developmental milestone scales, allowing for tailored assessments based on referral concerns. You can administer either one of the scales independently or the full Connors EC. Additionally, the Adaptive Skills Scale enables targeted assessment without needing a full adaptive measure. As identified in the research discussed earlier, inattention in early childhood can be a symptom of various conditions, such as ADHD, anxiety, autism, mood, and learning disorders. The visual outlines the behavior scales and developmental milestones included in the Connors EC. Regarding inattention specifically, common characteristics of high scores on the Inattention Hyperactivity Scale include difficulty controlling attention and/or behavior. Children may have poor concentration, be easily distracted, lose interest quickly, or have difficulty finishing tasks. Intervention targets for the Inattention Hyperactivity Scale include persistence, task completion, listening skills, impulse control, and staying calm. Additional treatment targets include increasing independence and cognitive flexibility, both important skills when addressing inattention. Before we introduce the Connors Kiddie Continuous Performance Test, 2nd edition, let's take a moment to answer, what is a continuous performance test? The first continuous performance test, CPT, was introduced in 1956. The researchers' goal was to devise a new diagnostic test that would, 1, not allow the respondents to choose his or her own time to respond, and 2, require a high level of continuous attention over a considerable interval of time. Since then, CPT paradigms have shifted to meet research goals and have evolved and expanded to assess attentional issues in certain clinical populations, such as ADHD. A continuous performance test, CPT, is a computer-based task used to assess attention-related issues. It identifies specific areas of difficulty, such as sustained attention, inattentiveness, impulsivity, and vigilance, whether it's one area or a combination. A CPT objectively assesses attentional difficulties without bias from another person. While respondents might intentionally respond poorly, cooperation observed by the assessor ensures the data's objectivity. Some CPTs, like the Connors, include a validity check. During a CPT, respondents are presented with a repetitive, boring task and must maintain their focus over a period of time. In order to respond to targets or inhibit responses to non-targets. And this is typically done by utilizing a keyboard spacebar or a computer mouse. For example, if utilizing a spacebar, when a target appears on the computer screen, a respondent would press the spacebar. If a non-target appears on the screen, the respondent would want to stop themselves from pressing the spacebar. CPTs typically use letters and/or images as targets and non-targets. The Connors Kiddie Continuous Performance Test, second edition, assesses attention deficits in children ages 4 to 7 years, 11 months. The Connors K-CPT-2 uses both raw and standardized scores to determine a child's performance overall, but also in 4 different aspects of attention, including inattentiveness, impulsivity, sustained attention, and vigilance. Standardized scores allow the assessor to compare a given child to a normative group in an objective and reliable manner. While the Connors K-CPT-2 is a useful adjunct in the process of diagnosing disorders characterized by attention deficits, such as ADHD, it is also useful in educational assessment, early identification of attention concerns, and educational classification. The assessment can be administered before intervention and at subsequent intervals to monitor progress. The performance-based information from the Connors K-CPT-2 is a great complement when used in combination with other assessments, such as the Connors Early Childhood Broadband Measure. We are excited to launch the new Connors K-CPT-2 online in early 2025. The updated online version of the measure transforms it from a standalone software version on a USB to a web application that can be accessed on multiple computers, while maintaining the original psychometric properties and test paradigm. Accessed on the MHS Online Assessment Center Plus, Mac Plus portal, along with other MHS assessments like the Connors EC, the Connors K-CPT-2 online helps you access the measure, administer, score, and generate a report from anywhere with an internet connection. You will also have access to the free digital manual. Stay tuned for more updates about the launch. Administration time for the Kiddie Continuous Performance Test, second edition, is 7.5 minutes. Before each administration, there is also a 1-minute practice test for the child to acclimate to the stimuli and for the administrator to ensure that the child understands the task instructions. The practice can be repeated if necessary. Observing a child during the K-CPT-2 is essential to ensure valid and reliable results. It helps identify distractions, fatigue, anxiety, or lack of engagement that might affect performance. This context allows for a more accurate assessment of attentional difficulties and informs better targeted interventions. During the K-CPT-2, children are seated in front of a computer and are required to respond when any picture, except that of a soccer ball, appears on the monitor. The K-CPT-2 uses varying ISIs to assess how well a child can maintain attention over different time intervals. For a little context, ISI stands for interstimulus interval. This is the time interval between the presentation of one stimulus and the next. Specifically, the K-CPT-2 includes blocks with ISIs of 1.5 seconds and 3 seconds. These varying ISIs are used to assess how well a child can maintain attention over different time intervals. There are 5 blocks, sets of trials, with 2 subblocks each, consisting of 20 trials. Within each block, the subblocks have different ISIs, 1.5 and 3 seconds. And the order in which ISIs are presented varies between blocks. Responses from the 7.5-minute 200 trial protocol are used to compute scores that assess various aspects of the child's attention. The K-CPT-2 provides detailed scores that offer valuable insights into a child's attentional abilities. These scores include response style, information on how the child's style of responding is either conservative, balanced, or liberal, error types, analysis of specific errors made, like omissions, missed targets, and commissions, incorrect responses, as well as perseverations, which are anticipatory, repetitive, or random responses. And also reaction time statistics, data on how quickly and consistently the child responds to stimuli, including average reaction time and variability. This comprehensive data helps in addressing attention-related issues and tailoring intervention to the child's specific needs. We're going to have a little interactive session for you all. In a few moments, you will see a snippet of the K-CPT-2, and we would like to ask each of you to find a space around you where you can gently tap each time you see a picture other than a soccer ball. So how did that feel for everyone? Did you notice the different ISIs? Remember, we are asking the child to maintain their focus and attention over a period of time in order to respond to targets or inhibit responses to non-targets. The K-CPT-2 can be repeated as a progress monitoring tool once interventions have been identified and implemented. The Conners K-CPT-2 accurately discriminates between clinical and non-clinical groups. Adding the Conners K-CPT-2 to a broadband emotional and behavior rating scale, such as the Conners Early Childhood, increases the ability to predict group membership, such as ADHD versus general population groups. I would like to take a moment and ask everyone to consider a child you know, perhaps one you have assessed, plan to assess, or one that a teacher, parent, or friend has expressed concerns about. Think about how having a comprehensive view of the child can lead to a more effective identification, intervention, and/or plan for services. Using both a broadband and a performance-based measure can provide valuable insights into a child's readiness for school. This includes areas such as social-emotional development, cognitive and pre-academic skills, attention span, language, and physical development. Imagine how this information can help us understand a child's ability to focus on tasks and show curiosity and interest in learning, all vital skills for formal schooling. Inattention in early childhood can be a strong predictor of subsequent academic achievement and is not unique to a diagnosis of ADHD. Focusing early intervention on inattention in early childhood can have broader implications in the development of both externalizing and/or internalizing disorders that may develop through childhood. The Connors assessments offer detailed and targeted information on behavior, development, and attention issues. These tools help us identify strengths and challenges early, supporting school readiness as a child transitions to kindergarten and beyond. Addressing inattention in early childhood is crucial because it can impact various areas of development and school readiness. So I'm going to turn it over to Arthi to talk a little bit more in depth about intervention for inattention.
So now that we understand how important assessments are for identifying children with inattention challenges, let's look at ways that we can intervene. Speaking more generally, behavioral interventions remain the treatment of choice for most preschoolers with ADHD. For young children, however, most classroom-based early interventions do not target specific diagnoses, like ADHD, but focus on broader goals to improve social skills or academic readiness and decrease risk behaviors. When the intervention is more generic, it focuses more on age-appropriate risk behaviors rather than on one specific disorder at a time. When it comes to children, we know that parenting is really important for their development. In fact, in the context of ADHD, poor parenting skills and parental psychopathology has been linked to a child's ADHD development and difficulties. Parental behavior training can be helpful in addressing these concerns early on from the very beginning of parenting. This can also help parents with their own stress and the relationship between the parent and the child. Parent training teaches parents to provide clear and consistent expectations and directions to their children. Notice the child's strengths, build on them, and positively reinforce them. Assist with making friends and learning how to work well with others. Break down larger tasks, asking the child to repeat instructions, and importantly, build healthy habits through encouraging behaviors like limiting screen time, eating healthy, staying active, and getting lots of sleep. Now, medications are not as well researched in preschool children, and even less so for inattention specifically. Younger children may be more sensitive to medication than elementary school kids, so they tend to be recommended for more severe cases in older children when using behavioral therapies has not shown significant improvement. There's also less information on the long-term benefits of medications when compared to behavioral intervention, given medications tend to work only as long as they're taken. While medication has its place, the cornerstone of managing inattention challenges in younger children lies in behavioral interventions like parental training. These strategies not only address immediate concerns, but also lay a foundation for long-term developmental success by fostering essential skills and strengthening the parent-child relationship. I'm going to pass it back to Rebecca.
So what does all of this information mean for school psychologists and other clinical psychologists who are assessing students for the purposes of early intervention? School psychologists are trained in childhood development and view behavior and development from a longitudinal perspective. You are also knowledgeable about educational systems. Who better to communicate and advocate when those educational systems do not follow developmental needs and variability of our youngest learners? Data indicates that school entry practices are inconsistent and vary across states. Additionally, we know that age is not the most reliable or accurate predictor of a child's success when they begin formal schooling. Information provided by NASP's School Readiness underscores that current public policy demands that schools meet higher standards and young children are exposed to increasingly rigorous academic programs beginning in kinder. Given these expectations, are preschoolers ready? Young children can be hard to evaluate accurately due to rapid development, short attention span, and inconsistent performance on demand, as well as the need to consider varying linguistic, cultural exposure and heritage, and personal experience. School psychologists work with families and school stakeholders through collaboration, leadership, and advocacy. As Arthi just mentioned, parenting skills and support is important for intervening early. Additionally, Having good data through evaluation not only helps with intervention planning, but also with minimizing impairment. As school psychologists, we collaborate with school leaders, staff, and families to support young learners. Our consultation skills are crucial during this time period. Today, we've covered various consultation areas, including learning behaviors and early childhood inattention. We've also provided information on the tools to gather additional data on inattention early. Quoting NASP, educators should be prepared for children's varying readiness levels. It's unreasonable to expect uniform readiness skills. Schools should teach at each child's level, and having this data is essential for successful consultation. Identifying and addressing potential delays early on can improve school readiness and future learning, or social-emotional outcomes. School psychologists play a crucial role as resources and collaborators in this process. NASP has created resources around developmentally appropriate practices framework that ties today's conversation together. The National Association for the Education of Young Children, as referenced here, states developmentally appropriate practice is informed by what we know from theory and literature about how children develop and learn. In its developmentally appropriate practice key message of the position statement, NAEYC shares the following in defining developmentally appropriate practices: that all teaching practices should be appropriate to children's age and developmental status, attuned to them as unique individuals, and responsive to the social and cultural context in which they live. So I'm going to pass it back to Arthi to talk about our key takeaways.
Okay, so the key takeaways from today are that early childhood is a time of rapid development where identifying inattention and co-occurring challenges is key. Though ADHD may not be diagnosed at this stage, early identification and intervention are crucial. High-quality early interventions not only maximize the brain's capacity for change, but also minimize long-term difficulties, setting the stage for lifelong learning and growth. Focus on skill building through behavioral intervention over diagnosis to provide tailored support for each child's developmental journey is very important. All of you here today who work with this younger population are uniquely qualified to address this developmental timeframe. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Early childhood is a period of remarkable growth and development. Early identification and skill-building interventions in early childhood are crucial for addressing inattention and co-occurring challenges, maximizing developmental potential, and minimizing long-term difficulties. If you need any of the sources we mentioned today or used in the presentation, you can find them at the end of this slide deck. If you're a clinician, researcher, or other professional who works with children ages 18 months to 5 years and their families, we'd love to partner with you on our data collection initiatives for Autism Spectrum Rating Scales and Connors EC. By partnering with MHS, you will help ensure that our future assessments are informed and up to date, as well as valid, reliable, and fair. Thank you for helping us maintain the high standards and quality that MHS strives for. The QR code to the right is for anyone that's able to help. Here's our information if you ever have any questions or want to chat.
We have a couple of questions. So the first one is, what are some practical strategies for educators and parents to support children identified with attention challenges based on the insights gained from these assessments?
What I want to start with to say about this question is when we talk about practical strategies for educators, I'm hoping that the overview of early childhood today, what resonates too is the difficulties at times in identifying just attention and attention as part of a lot of different co-occurring needs that may be occurring during this time period. So one of the things that we really love about the Connors EC, especially as a broadband measure, is being able to identify not only attention challenges, but all other co-occurring challenges that may be happening for the child. So with the Connors EC, when we look at those results, we can also look at treatment targets based on the results. And the manual does a really great job of identifying those results so that then you can build a more comprehensive intervention that's not just focusing on one target, but more than, more of a broadband approach. The other piece I wanted to mention is when we're talking about attention challenges, specifically with the Kiddie continuous performance test, second edition, is then we can identify specific areas of attention challenges and intervene. And then also keep in mind both of these tools can be re-administered as progress monitoring to see what that progress is when we do put those interventions in place. So I guess what I want to leave with, or what I want to make sure that I'm articulating, is that both of these tools, while we know based on what we just presented as far as attention challenges being so important to identify and target, we're also able to address co-occurring issues throughout this time period. Keeping in mind the slide about school psychologists and clinical psychologists that work with students this age, also really being able to articulate, advocate for those rapidly developmental changes that are occurring during this time period. So being able to really target more than just attention, but attention and all of the things that may be happening for the child as things are happening very quickly in development for this age group.
Thank you so much for the detailed answer, Rebecca. The next question we have is, why might narrowband assessments to be preferred over a broadband assessment? Can you give more context?
So yeah, that's a great question. Narrowband assessments can be preferred over broadband assessments when there's this need for focus or in-depth evaluation of a specific condition. So if we're looking specifically at ADHD or autism, they're designed to capture the nuances and like the detailed symptomology of any single disorder usually, which makes it more, which helps in making a more accurate diagnosis or in understanding specific challenges. So narrowband assessments focus on specific set of symptoms. Sometimes it's based on the DSM, sometimes it's not, or behaviors linked to a particular disorder. So for example, our Connors 4 or our autism spectrum rating scale are both narrowband assessments, one for ADHD and one for autism, that provide detailed information that are relevant for those respective conditions. When you have a high suspicion of a specific disorder, a narrowband assessment can offer more diagnostic accuracy because it pinpoints disorder-specific symptoms rather than symptoms that might be a part of several disorders. And then why is that important? Why do we want that? It's especially useful when you're coming up with effective intervention plans. So it can help, but it can also help to like complete a broadband assessment, get an idea of what may be challenging for the individual, and then moving on to a narrowband assessment to confirm and plan that intervention. One perk of a narrowband assessment is also that it's typically shorter to complete and a lot more time efficient than broadband assessments, making it a practical kind of thing to use when the primary concern is a limited area like inattention or hyperactivity for ADHD, and also with lots of like intake times and things being so high and not having as much time with patients, this can be very helpful. Choosing between a narrowband and broadband assessment depends on the context. For differential diagnosis or general screening, broadband can be useful, while detailed assessment, like I mentioned, or of a suspected disorder, narrowband is usually preferred. Yeah, especially with little kiddos, if you're looking for an assessment of just initially screening to see what might be wrong or where they might be having challenges, broadband can be very useful. We actually cover this topic quite in depth in a blog post that I think Elena will link here if you're interested in learning more as well. I hope that was a helpful answer.
Thank you, Arthi. Yes, the link is in the chat. So anyone who is interested to get more information, they can grab that link. The next question is, what are the main obstacles in implementing effective interventions for attention-related problems in preschoolers, and how can these be overcome?
I'll take this. And I do want to say as I start, these are such great questions that I feel like deserve like so much more chat back and forth time, because they're exactly what part of this time frame, this developmental time frame can be very difficult, but also why we are so passionate about it, because there's so many interventions and data that we can collect for our early childhood population so that we can support them throughout, as they get going for early schooling, kindergarten and beyond. So I don't think this is much of a surprise, but one of the biggest areas of difficulty in this time frame for intervening is how rapid children are developing. So intervening, doing an assessment, intervening early, and then walking away and reevaluating, a year or two down the road isn't going to work because things are happening so rapidly. So I think the biggest challenge is making sure that that assessment is accurate. It's broad, like we talked about today, that we're looking at those co-occurring difficulties and challenges, but also the strengths of the child and monitoring those areas of growth. And then because development is so rapid during this time frame, that we're really monitoring that progress. So it's not something that we can maybe intervene for an older child and come back and do that later. We're doing that pretty constantly, right? Intervening. I think the other part of that is, making sure that we have the right treatment targets or intervening, our targets for intervention are set, and that we're monitoring those, but that we're also always aware of the co-occurring difficulties with attention. So again, attention is a rapidly developing skill in early childhood, wanting to make sure that we're ready, those children have those ready to learn behaviors, but that we're always monitoring for other things happening. I know that's a really kind of broad answer to the question, because I think you can go a lot of different ways in answering this, but just making sure that we are intervening and progress monitoring quite frequently during this time frame. Hopefully that answers that question.
Perfectly. Thank you, Rebecca, for this answer. And the last question we have is how to account for clients who use time of responding to improve their performance on CPT, K-CPT2.
I'll jump in, and then if Arthi wants to add, I want to make sure that I'm responding to the question, so there may be some additional context that I'm not that I may be missing, but I did want to say, as far as giving this evaluation, I think it's really important that we are observing during this these administrations. And if we're noticing a certain type of response style, so for example, okay, the child is trying to work slower to improve that speed. I think that's great information, that information that you're gaining through observation, to be able to see how the child is responding, and then where that intervention could take place outside of the assessment, for example. So I see clients can slow down, so we're slowing down the rate of responding to reduce those errors, but that's also good information on maybe how the child is responding, for example, in the classroom. Is this a skill? Is this actually maybe something that's helpful for the student? And that actually could be an intervention in itself. So while obviously the K-CPT2 is going to give you such a wealth of information regarding response style, types of errors, things like that, the observational data that you're going to gain by observing that student during that 7.5 minutes is also very valuable in how to support the student with interventions. And again, maybe there's some strengths that you're noticing in how the response style of the student is changing.
Well, thank you so much again to both of you, Arthi and Rebecca, for an informative presentation today. I would like to thank all our attendees who joined us. If we did not get your question in this webinar, please send us an email at marketing@mhs.com, and we will forward your question along to our presenters. Thank you so much, everyone.